the value of what we do as architects is still the thinking.
Where do you think architectural visualizers will be in the future? Like, what's going to happen with them?
At the moment, they are tools. Maybe they'll cross the line from a tool to a collaborator.
Does that mean that the physical ways of creation are also coming back as a way of pushing back on this new technology?
I mean, yeah, if I was a rendering firm, I would be sweating a little bit. I mean,
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
AI hasn't really taken over.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Now, so much has been discussed about AI and architecture and how it can potentially take over the industry, but it's one thing hearing a ton of speculation and potential use cases, and it's another thing actually talking to someone who's at the forefront of this new technology. In this special collab between Steven from Show You Better and I, we bring you Olly Thomas, the design technology specialist at Big in London. This conversation with Olly goes into what the new generation of architects will likely face in the upcoming years and how to prepare for this tech revolution. Olly also dives into what he sees as the best application for AI in architecture at the moment and how that might evolve. And you will even hear how AI is being implemented at one of the most innovative architecture firms. This conversation really changed the view I had about the present moment of AI in architecture practice, and I'm sure it will have an impact on you as well. All right, but I wanted to start from the beginning, Olly, because you mentioned something about switching from the BIM specialist position to a more AI-centered position within Big Bjarke Ingels group. How did that come to life? Like, what happened? Did you train to that position? Is it something that naturally progressed into something that you're interested?
I mean, I joined Big initially as a BIM specialist. They hired me, but they knew I had this other skill set of computation. For a while, like I stayed at that position for a while. It got to a point where we were kind of like, I need to rename myself. And we actually see this in the industry a fair bit. Like, you're now getting people with BIM and computation and now AI and all this other kind of stuff. So my title switched from a BIM specialist to a design technology specialist. Now I'm a design technology manager of the London office, which means I cover BIM, computation, AI, AR, VR, and all of this stuff. It's our umbrella term for technology that we use to design things. And more recently, I've been kind of interested in picking up some of the AI stuff and trying to implement it into the office, which is a challenge in itself, just keeping up with it and getting it into the hands of the designers like as quick as we can, really. But no, there is no training to get into anything to do with AI, I guess, apart from like computer science or something like that if you really get into it. So it's just been a case of like seeing this thing, being really interested in it, and just trying to keep up with what's going on and test it and try it out, really. That's it.
Yeah, because when we went to the office at Big in New York, we talked with Daniel, and Daniel told us that they were kind of like informally implementing Midjourney into their design process just to have like a ton of iterations and just testing out the tools. That was like 3 months ago, but then we see that in 3 months, things change a lot. So how has things changed now? How do you guys actually use AI within the design process, if you do at all?
Of course, the first thing was to get up to speed with these things like Midjourney. I mean, we started to latch on, well over a year ago now. So we were talking about Midjourney version 3, when it was almost like, it kind of looked like watercolor painted style.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And then obviously Midjourney version 4 came, which was a big step up. And it was around that time where I was like, we just need to get this out there. Of course, people were already testing it and experimenting it. So we use what we call a big school, which is where we like someone from the office presents like, hey, this is this AI thing. I kind of give a background of what AI is, a bit of the history of AI, and a much broader perspective of like what is potentially around the corner. And then more specifically, like this AI, this Midjourney thing. And then at that time, we were kind of comparing DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. And the first goal was to just like get to grips with it. What happens if we type in Bjarke Ingels group, and does it understand our design or not?
Yeah.
And get it into the hands of the designers to just try it. Some of them used it on a project, some of them kind of just played around with it. People created funny memes, people created like fun architecture projects, and that's always the goal, is to just, it's almost like catching a rugby ball or like, I guess, for those of you in America, like American football, and passing it on to the designers and teaching them how to throw it and use it right. Where we are now, I think we're really still experimenting with these things, like constantly seeing how the different teams are using it in the design process, keeping up to date with all the new stuff that's coming up. Like I see you guys were experimenting with D5 rendering, and they have this new AI component. So we quickly need to test that and see, is this something we can get into the hands of the designers? So I think we're still very much in the process of testing, keeping up to date, and really seeing how it fits into the design process. There is a little bit more of tinkering where we're kind of like, we did experiment with connecting our design tools to things like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion, when we can connect Rhino and Grasshopper with these things. And these are always like tests, that we're not software developers, so we're kind of like hacking these things together. Can we send a screenshot from Rhino to Stable automatically? At the moment, of course, we can't do that with Midjourney, but it's very much things like that, like really seeing how we can integrate it into the design process. Of course, I think we're at the point now where, and a lot of firms are doing this, is like now training your own model on the things you have in the office. Of course, you want this to be somewhat contained, so like it doesn't get out. But that's of course, with Stable, people train models in different ways. You can download them for free if they make them public, right? So we're seeing lots of firms training their own models with the materials they have, and seeing how that integrates into the design process. So it's constantly a testing, integrating, and evaluating how useful or how disruptive it is to our design process at the moment.
So that means that it's mostly using the first stages of a design process, in the preliminary stages, more about iterating ideas. But do you see a place where AI can take time-consuming tasks, or like those more laborious tasks, as in detailing, maybe scheduling and all of that? Or is this something you're experimenting with?
So I think I've been trying to like categorize all of these AI stuff, these AI tools, right? And let's take Midjourney, for example. I think Midjourney is most powerful as like idea iteration. It's great to like, you come up with an initial idea and you can maybe get close to that, and most importantly, visualize and communicate that idea. At the same time, the value of what we do as architects, and particularly at Big, is still the thinking, the researching behind these things, and finding out all about the site and the things around it, and coming up with this unique solution that is based on thinking. That's where architects create their most valuable and the biggest value. And truth be told, this Midjourney image creation side of things is not necessarily affecting that, because these images are thoughtless in that, like, there is no thinking behind it. It's an image. Yes, the end result of our design process is an image, which is a render or a diagram or something like that. But really the value is in the thinking behind it. And that hasn't changed. Like, Midjourney has not disrupted that. But it has been an interesting like sidekick for idea generation. Like it could be, you could type in and explore like a particular thing you're thinking about the project, and it may spark an idea or something like that. So I do see a lot of architects talking about Midjourney as like a super Pinterest. It's kind of like an idea,
but in a more curated version.
Exactly. Yeah.
More inputs.
And of course, the more control you have over it, the more powerful that becomes. So there's one category which is like idea iteration, and I think maybe Midjourney kind of falls into that category, for example. And then the next way I kind of see it being used is almost like AI automation, and we're seeing bits of this. I guess the simplest and dumbest way is like, you can now go to ChatGPT and you write in a bunch of text and it formats it for you. Obviously, that's a very simple way, but it's like, it's saving you the time of rewriting things or rewording things, or maybe go to ChatGPT to look up the building regulations or something like that, and it actually gives you the correct results. Of course, you have to cross-check it or something like that. But
Yeah.
we're also seeing these like apps where they're kind of doing plan generation and all this kind of stuff, which is, it's not quite really using AI, but it's giving us a glimpse into the future of automating some of the stuff that we spend a lot of time doing. I always talk about, like, a really dumb example is like Mr. Clippy. I don't know if you guys might be too young for Mr. Clippy, but there was a
Steven talked to me about Mr. Clippy once. I remember.
Oliver didn't remember, but I do.
What happened to Mr. Clippy, man? He's gone. But like, I imagine Mr. Clippy could come back in Revit and be like, "Hey," and automatically adjust your stairs so they meet building regulations in the part of the world you're working in, right? So we then have like the AI automation side of things, which I guess ChatGPT would be the simplest example. You see a lot of people building plugins that are now AI generated, but really they're just connected to the ChatGPT API that I don't know how much are really using AI. And then finally, I think you've got maybe what I call like the AI visualization side, which is almost also flirting with like the automation side, where it's a bit more stable diffusion. I guess now Midjourney, where you can select things. You got Veras, LookX AI, the new D5 rendering AI, where you can be very much more surgical on even the Photoshop AI. Like, you can be very surgical on enhancing your visualization process. Let's just take the Photoshop AI one. That has now, I no longer need to spend hours looking for a person sitting down in the correct position at the correct sunlight.
Yes.
Right?
Well, but I was going to ask you this: Have you had any luck with adding people? Because every time people AI Photoshop generative fill has a hard time in getting like people
it seems
decently
people,
made.
It seems to be like anything with people in any of the AI stuff seems to be there's something slightly off about them. They got like an eye on the side of their head or something like that. But that will only get better. But of course, sometimes it can be really simple things like landscaping or trees and all this kind of stuff. But again, that's like a bit of a dumb example. But I think where it's potentially the most powerful at the moment is that middle ground, where we're starting to see, like, you feed it a image from Rhino from a massing or something that is based on your thinking, which is where you're adding value as an architect, and then it's quickly allowing you to ideate through different facades, like different moods of the image. I think it was Steven, I was watching your video on where you had like, you created an image with D5 and then you'd gone through different feels of that. So that's like the third category, which is maybe a little bit of both of like idea iteration and also automation, where it's basically streamlining that process now.
Yeah, I find that part like super hard to understand right now, because as you said, in the design process, we still have like a lot of real estate there to grasp. Like, AI hasn't really taken over, but in terms of visualization, when we see things like D5, maybe, I don't know, in 6 months, more Enscape and more render engines like Enscape or Lumion start to also use AI. And with Midjourney and how like particular and specific it's getting, where do you think architectural visualizers will be in the future? Like, what's going to happen with them?
That's a good question, yeah. I actually had Jan Bung from Squint Opera on our podcast, and he wrote a paper called the death of the visualizer, or the death of renderers, a little while ago. And I mean, if I was a rendering firm, I would be sweating a little bit. I mean, it's true. Yeah, it's a great question, because first of all, we have real-time rendering. And that already, as an architect, brought a bit more control back to us. You think, before that, you'd have to do the whole V-Ray thing and set it up. And now you can create quite good images. Yeah, maybe not like super
Yeah.
production level, but Enscape, Twinmotion, you can create quite incredible images very quickly. And that meant that as an architect, you get back in the hands the control of visualizing. Now with AI, I think you're already getting render level quality stuff from Midjourney. The thing is, Midjourney is super good quality, and you can get those results, but you can't necessarily get the control you want. The ones where you have control, you don't quite have that level of quality yet, but that's only going to come. But yeah, I think that it's honestly, I don't know, but if I was a Viz person, I think I'd be a little bit more worried than I am now. But of course, again, the value that the good visualization people add, like Mur, for example, is the story and the thinking behind the image.
Yeah.
So I actually think, like, for example, a Mur or Squint Opera or something like that, I see they will just use these softwares and tools to their advantage to continue that. So I do think it comes down to like that thinking. What is the thinking behind that image? Yeah, basic renders, they're probably going to lose some jobs, but those people that are really creating amazing things, maybe not.
Yeah, those that have a high level of control of the image, the narrative behind it, maybe the specifics of a scene, either telling a story behind it. Because as of right now, and I don't know if in a couple of years that will change, but you cannot control that. I sometimes feel that all of the AI generated images, they tend to have a similar style. You look at them and they all feel within the same category, which as of right now is not really a good thing. But I think once it evolves, it will give us a more of a range of possibilities in terms of result.
That's super interesting because I've also noticed the same thing. I think you need to get to a good level of, I call it prompt whispering.
Yeah.
to some of the good people like Tim Foos, Will Gardner, and all this kind of stuff, they have developed a style which is quite interesting. But I have myself, like I've been tinkering for my own, like, you sit there on a Sunday and you're like, I've got an idea, and then you go down this rabbit hole of Midjourney. But then I've been online and I've seen someone's created an idea that looks really similar to an idea that I've generated.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're asking the same designer to come up with these things. And so you do start to see this like repetition of ideas and style. And I wonder if that's like part of getting really good at the prompting and the control of it. But yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
Maybe the con of it is like you are seeing it's got its own style that is kind of repeating its places.
On that line of prompting, do you think, like, because right now it is a skill that you develop and there are people getting hired based on their prompting skills, but don't you think that in a couple of years AI will really get good at prompting as well? So then it's kind of a cycle that happens where prompting gets better, the images get better, and then that prompting skill doesn't really become useful.
Yeah.
Or do you guys agree with that or no?
We already see that with like Midjourney 3, Midjourney 4, for example. I think you really had to be a bit of a prompt whisperer. And then V5 came, and talking to all of these kind of people, they were like, it was almost like it wiped the slate clean, because instead of being these quite complicated, like a description sentence and then all these like additional tags, let's call them, like cyberpunk or ultra realistic. Do you remember at the beginning you used to see like Vive render super hyper realistic and all this kind of stuff, but then V5 came and it was much more plain English. Like it was not so, the prompting got way simpler, and the results were still good. So I do think we're already seeing that, actually. We also did like a fun experiment where we made like a little brief, and it was actually for like a theme park. One of the guys that was helping with this big school made it, and we asked ChatGPT to like come up with the concept. It was almost like giving it a fake project, and we gave it a brief to come up with like a theme park, and we then said, give me prompts to visualize that. And then we piped it into Midjourney, and it created these like quite interesting images.
Yeah.
And then we kind of went down this rabbit hole. We were like, oh, well, tell us what a theme park ride would be like in this project and stuff like that. And I've also done the same with kind of my own experiments where we're testing like, what is the future of housing going to be? Okay, create an image of what this would look like, and then piping it into Midjourney. So it's been quite interesting, like this, like you say, Oliver, this feedback loop of AI, and that's where it gets like super exciting, but also a little bit scary at the same time.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like us three, we seem like very optimistic about the future with AI because we see like a lot of ways to use it. But what do you see like a recent graduated architect who had the plans like a year before to go into an architectural office, start like from the bottom, drawing plans, then creating renders, then going on to design processes? How will they, like their jobs change? Because I imagine that now if you are an architect and you have a little bit of AI prompting experience, it'll go much better for you than if you just know how to use Revit really well.
I'm actually more excited for them than when I was in their position, because they will not have to go through, well, hopefully they won't have to go through too much of the drawing plans line by line in CAD or like, endless nights photoshopping or sitting there waiting for 3ds Max to render the worst render you've ever seen, but still takes like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So already from my generation, like even something that like Enscape has made the new generation's life so much better because it's so much less painful. And again, it comes back to the point of they can spend more time with the thinking and adding value than being a intern or junior architect where you're endlessly modeling or photoshopping or rendering. You can actually have time to input more into the design process. So I mean, it is an optimistic view, but I'm less concerned that AI is coming to take our jobs and take over as architects. I actually think it will allow us to focus in on what we're actually good at and what we add the value, which is the thinking process, and less being like wizards at CAD or BIM or whatever whatever it may be. So I'm more hopeful for them, but again, I think you can't ignore this AI stuff. It's very important to learn how to be an architect. You must learn the thinking process, but I definitely wouldn't ignore or dismiss this kind of AI movement at all.
Yeah, whenever we open question boxes or talk about AI and ask feedback in the comments, that topic always comes up. With the worst scenario being the real scenario where architects will lose their jobs, and maybe we're not talking about in 2 years, 3 years, but maybe in 5, 10 years. So you don't see it. I don't see it that way. Well, at least I hope not. I see only as tools that will help us have more time to dedicate to what the architects are really capable and expected to be, instead of wasting time doing renderings, doing time-consuming tasks, and will free us up to have more time to dedicate to those tasks. So that's how I see it. So that's, I think, how Steven sees it as well. And you, so that's not the case here, I guess. That we'll lose our jobs and architects will be useless. That's always the topic. It's funny how it always comes up.
This will be the famous clip where Big no longer leads me because AI is like dominated him and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, of course, it's a more optimistic view. It is absolutely going to disrupt our industry. Do not make a mistake about it. I do feel we're in a very unique moment where our industry is going to change. I have post on our ATN Instagram about how the era we're in, and I feel like and how it's going to affect practice. So I do think we'll see architecture practice change. And for example, I think we're moving into what I would call the AI collaborative era. So, which is Architect 3.0. This is stolen from the book Life 3.0, which is I highly recommend to read about. It's much more about general AI affecting life, but I kind of stole that analogy to create an architecture equivalent where Architect 1.0 was when we're kind of the manual era. That was back in the day, so almost before my generation, where it was like hundreds of people on a floor plate drawing one building by hand. And then we had Architect 2.0, which is kind of the era we're in, the computer-aided era, where we use computers as somewhat sidekicks or almost like computerized slaves to help us do things quicker. That can be AutoCAD, Grasshopper, all of these things. Like a Grasshopper script is just you giving a computer a ton of instructions, and it does it much more quicker than we can do it. But it's not smart. It's just like it's executing this thing for us. And so we were in the computer-aided era, and then you saw an architecture practice go from like a floor plate of mostly men at that time drawing by hand to a much more diverse office where you could take a picture of our office right now in Big, where everyone is sitting in front of computers, and let's say anywhere from 10 to 5 to 15, depending on the size of the project, can handle a project, whereas before that number maybe 50 people. I do think we will see the new era could be like much smaller, nimbler practices, where small teams collaborate with AI to tackle these similar projects, and hopefully we'd see a much more diverse array of different practices. So I think, practices might get smaller, but we might have much more variation of practices. I could definitely see that in the future. And actually, there's a really good example. I just did a podcast with the founder of LookX AI, who also has a company called XCool. She was called Wan Yu He, and I highly recommend to check out the podcast she did with Digital Futures, I think it's called, where her small team were using AI to test the tools that they make. They're kind of like a technology company, but they started to enter competitions using AI, and with like a 3-person team, they actually won the competition.
Wow,
and I thought
crazy.
that's really an indication of what I think the future will have. So it will disrupt us, but I think it's not necessarily like AI is taking over jobs. We might see a more interesting array of practices and things like that.
I think I have the book here, just which is in Portuguese, but
Yes, the Max Tech.
Max
It's a
Tegmark,
different cover, but that's it. Max Tegmark's Life 3.0.
it's really interesting, and I love the analogy between what he describes as Life 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 in relation to architecture. That was really interesting.
Yeah, and in a sort of way, you see like other industries like photography with like so many advanced tools within photography. Many are going back into the analog and going back to printing photos and trying to maybe even taking photos with their phone and trying to print them out and trying to have a more manual workflow now that they know that they can spend some more time with that. Do you think that's going to also go into an architecture kind of phase where we are more interested in creating maybe models, maybe hand drawings that are not necessarily, so time consuming, but more for our design process?
Yeah, I think that's getting back to the core thinking of the architect. So like, if you don't need to spend the afternoon, photoshopping this image, it means you can spend that extra half day sketching the actual idea, like before you get to that point, right? So I think you could see us get back to sketching, and I think you're also seeing architects now getting into like sketching to AI. They sketch and then can very quickly see somewhat rendered version of their sketch, which again is that idea iteration part where you can go sketch to render now really quick. So yes, I do think you'll see more people like going back to drawing, that kind of stuff. the thinking part. I do also think we will see a rise in like artisanal architects. Like, like, do you see how we now like see people coming back and everyone's going back to like the old way of doing things, like making coffee artisanal, and then you get little tattoos of coffee. We were joking on a podcast. I'm sure we'll see like artisanal architects. You'll get a little T-square tattoo on your arm, and you're not allowed to use a computer and stuff like that.
It's possibly because there's always when we as society go so much into one side, and it feels like we're over pushing this way of AI, computers, everything so digitally made. There's always that pushback, that slingshot back to the more manual method, more to manual creation. That's something that also came up with the Instagram questions that I posted. A lot of people asking, so if AI is becoming so relevant, does that mean that the physical ways of creation are also coming back as a way of pushing back on this new technology? And I think that's the answer, right?
Yeah, it could do. Yeah, I think it's always double-edged, isn't it? Because like on one way you could interpret that like, for example, in the office at Big, it was obviously Big was is a baby REM, right? Bjarke worked at OMA. OMA was very famous for those blue physical models, right? The faux models. And I think that was a completely part of the design process of Big at the beginning, right? It was these blue faux models. And actually, it was about the era when I joined in 2018. Suddenly, these 3D printers all emerged in the workshop, and we moved from these handmade physical models to 3D printed physical models. But it didn't really take away from the reason why we're creating a physical model is to see it, feel it, and put it into context. You can never beat seeing even a physical model just in front of you. Even with VR and all this kind of stuff, you can't beat seeing it and feeling it and touching it. That's the valuable thing. Whether that's someone making that by hand, really painfully, or it's 3D printed, I could argue that actually that's not where the value of having that physical model is. It's about having it in your hands at the end. So again, I think it's a bit of both. Like that process will be digital, but also physical at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy that when you're talking about VR, and then when we met up a few years ago, you were talking about how VR was also getting into the design process, where you're trying to see like a type of hologram of your building, of your model. Where is VR now with the recent launch of what Meta launched, and where it's going? Where do you think, in terms of architecture and design, where do you think it's being implemented?
So the VR and AR side, I think is limited by the technology that we have right now. Still, I think people struggle with the headset thing. It's always a little bit awkward when you're in a meeting and one person has a headset on. They feel like a bit embarrassed because they don't know what's going on. But it does have value that you can feel like what it might be like to be in that space and things like that. I do think we're in the era, like these big old goggles that we have is kind of like the era when maybe our parents had those massive phones. We're in that era of the giant phone era. And actually, I was a little bit disappointed when Apple came out. I thought theirs was going to be
slicker, like more minimal.
Yeah, like a glass, like glasses or something. But of course, that will come, and that's when that technology will really take off. I mean, VR, of course, it's still part of the process. It's still being used. I wouldn't say it's a core part of it, but it's absolutely, we use it at the right time and when products need it. The same with augmented reality. It's again, like when there's particular use cases for it. AR side is much more about being on site and stuff like that. And of course we have products on site. We've been using it on our headquarters because of course it's a unique case where we are the designers, but we're also the client, and we can go on site and overlay a big model and stuff like that. So there's some really interesting stuff going on in that space. But I think the most interesting thing in that space, and whilst everyone is like FOMOing over AI right now, is what's happening in Unreal right now. I think is super exciting, and I wonder maybe that Unreal side will unlock the next era of VR and AR and all that kind of stuff, because there's some incredible stuff going on in
What's
Unreal.
happening, like for the people that don't have like any idea what's happening in Unreal?
Well, so first of all, like Unreal 5 unleashed this ability to create worlds, and handle huge models that are incredibly detailed. And we're also seeing lots of plugins and features that are coming with Unreal. Now I think you can download the whole of Google Maps and put it into Unreal.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so again, now you in theory no longer need to model your context, because you could download like a high resolution model from Google Earth.
Wow.
I think that there's things like that. There's also NVIDIA's Omniverse, which is super exciting, where it's kind of like a game engine is a really simple way of explaining it. But you see people bringing things from Unreal or Rhino or whatever it is into this place called the Omniverse, and then running insane simulations using the computational power that NVIDIA have. But yeah, there's loads of stuff going on with Unreal. Like the quality and the real time seems to be getting extremely good. Of course, you got like all the Quixel mega scans and all this kind of stuff. It seems to be a really, really exciting space, and I think everyone's looking at this AI stuff, but actually this Unreal stuff is as exciting, and eventually those two worlds will combine.
That's where the simulation will come. That's where
Then
we'll
we
realize that we're all just a game, like a really high quality game.
Yeah, that's where the Life 3.0 book really starts to kind of make you think about the possibilities.
Wow.
We're just speculating, right? Because AI evolves so rapidly. Every 3 to 4 months, it doubles in process power and in its capabilities. So we don't know. Like in 5 years, it's very hard to predict. These are my thoughts. Like, no one can predict really what's going to happen. I mean, maybe these people that are making these things.
Yeah.
That being said, I've had a few conversations with people that are building some of these tools, and we're in this image generation era. Of course, 3D is coming around the corner. You type in things and you will not just get an image, you might get a 3D thing. But still, that 3D model you get, I think would be very basic. To get to the level of detail that we need as architects, you're not talking about like a rough mesh model. You're talking like a very accurate model if you're talking about building or even a BIM model. And so I do think we're a long way from like text to real BIM, and there are already some examples with Hyper has done some kind of text to BIM things. It's very rudimentary, but it's a light into what the future could hold. But I do think we have a little bit of a way to go before you're like typing in and a BIM model appears.
Like on a lighter note, how do you use AI on your day to day? Because, for example, I feel like I have an assistant right here with me all day, and I ask her questions. Like sometimes I say thank you. I like in my writing emails and trying to solve a big task. Like, hey, like how do I automate, I don't know, these 10 emails, and they give me answers. I find it very, very useful, and it's not necessarily architecture related. It's more like business management. How do you personally like use AI?
It's probably the same. Like we all now have this ChatGPT sidekick that we're all using, and even if it's something as simple as rewording things, I'm not the best writer, so it's super interesting to use for me to reformat things and, like you say, like speed up the mundane, the emails and stuff like that. I think obviously for me, I'm usually like trying to help in the office. I'm trying to help the designers use it. So I may be like just teaching them some of the add-ons, like, oh, how do you change the aspect ratio of an image, or like these little tips and tricks. Like they have an image they want to use and work on top of it. So I'm like, okay, well, if you set this setting really high, it's just going to reinvent your image if you set it low. So I'm spending more time kind of giving people tips and tricks and or getting them up to speed with the basics of Midjourney. And then I say on a day-to-day basis, I come home and then I tinker. Like I have an idea. I think I most enjoy using it personally. Like many architects, you get ideas coming into your head, and you're like, man, I wish I had like a month to model that in Rhino and script it and create some images in Enscape or Unreal or whatever you're using. But now I can sit down and be like, oh, hey, what if you made a skyscraper of containers in Hong Kong? What would that look like? And boom, and you're like, I can get quite close to idea really quickly. But it's that last bit that you kind of, that's when you would need to come in and like, I want to refine it and get to the detail of it. So yeah, I think those are the three ways I've been using it. It's like one, production is almost like a production sidekick. Two is helping and teaching to get it into the hands of designers. And three, personally, I've just been enjoying playing with it and like visualizing ideas, really.
It's so funny, like saying thank you to ChatGPT, just in case, right? Just in case they, in the future, like they come.
They come
he
back.
always said thank you. Oliver was nice, so let's not do anything to him.
I always say thank you.
Yeah. How about you guys? How has AI affected what you guys do as, content creators, essentially, right? Like, has it affected the way that, has it reduced your editing time, or have you I've seen these AI apps for like creating reels and stuff like that. I've never tried it, but have you got any good advice for other creators out there? Like, has it affected what you guys do yet?
I think the tool that I mostly use is the Photoshop one, generative fill.
Yeah.
With like making thumbnails or fixing something from an image that will take it at least 30 minutes to an hour to do it. ChatGPT, of course, and I think Steven is much stronger on that sense, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I've tried to use a lot of tools that, the first, like the basic ones are the ones that generate like automatic captions for you and for your reels and like reframe the reels, I think in Premiere.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's AI or not, but if it just reframes your like old video, adds captions and makes it much more interesting. So I've been using that. I've also been using ChatGPT to generate like 20 title ideas, or maybe when I'm trying to tell a story through a video, sometimes I give it like my basic view of how I'm trying to tell the story, and then I'm like, hey, this is what I have. Could you maybe restructure it to make it sound more interesting, or are there any other possible ways of telling this same story? And then what else? I think I'm just answering emails and creating more like administrative tasks. ChatGPT is helping a lot.
You've used that image to video AI tool as well. I remember you posting something.
Oh, Runway. Yeah, we
Runway.
haven't talked about that. Yeah, I used it recently, and I thought it was crazy. I mean, I used the free version, so like the results were actually like very low quality, like 720 pixels. But I know that you can pay like not a lot of money, and you can have with your still render like I think there's like and if we go into Twitter, there are many people who have created entire movies out of Runway, Midjourney, and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And they're really high quality movies, and they're amazing. Which, if you wanted, you could use it for a whole architecture animation reel. You just export 5 different renders, and then Runway can animate it, and that's it.
I do think that's something interesting about, and Mariana brought this up in a podcast I did with her, where she was talking about algorithms feeding algorithms. And of course, one of the things we've seen with this AI image generation stuff is this explosion of these Instagram AI characters.
Yeah.
And of course, there is something really interesting in, like, you need to post, let's say you need to post every day on Instagram to continue to grow. And like, to create a project every day is hard work. Even if you create a project and you get 10 images out of it or something, it's a lot. It's a lot of content to create. Now you can create 100 ideas in one day, and you can post every hour if you have to. Like, and now we're seeing, you know, this algorithm that generates images is feeding this other algorithm, which is the Instagram algorithm or the YouTube algorithm or whatever. I guess it's less YouTube, but like, there's something quite interesting in that, and I do wonder how that will affect the content creation world.
I think it goes back to that idea that I was saying, like, when you go too much into the digital way of thinking, that there are some people that counter back on the manual way of doing stuff. So I think that you see more and more this AI generated content, 100 ideas in a day.
Yeah.
So I think the human part of all of this process is going to prevail in some sense, and it's going to get more importance at the end of the day, because in a couple of years we'll see more and more we interacting with AI generated content. So where's the real people behind this? And I think those are going to gain more traction than you would ever, because of that saturation of AI algorithm.
And I think it comes back down to, again, the thinking, like, you guys, it's about the ideas that you have to create the videos and the content, the knowledge that you're giving to your viewers. Whereas like, and I think for the image side, to me, it gets interesting when I understand a bit more the thinking behind the image, rather than it's just people posting endless images. And I think that those also seem to be the ones that grow the most as well. So, you know, hopefully it's the human brain that will prevail.
Yeah. It would be really interesting to have this conversation again, like in a year or two. Obviously, we're going to do more stuff before then, but imagine like seeing these predictions in a 2-year time and see like how did that evolve, and will we right about it or wrong?
Maybe I'll be homeless or something because I've got no job.
Yeah, you know.
But yeah, one way or another, I do think we're in a very interesting time, a very unique time in architecture, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for architects to maybe create something new, or we might see new types of architecture where we see the biological brain and the artificial brain or the synthetic brain come together and create things that we may not have thought of before. So
it's
I think
scary.
It's scary. I keep saying this period, it seems very scary, but also very exciting at the same time.
It's true.
And I think the most important thing is for people, like people maybe listening to this and are maybe confused or not sure where to go, is to not ignore it. Like try it out. I think I was talking to Tim Fu, had some great advice. Like, this is just the beginning. You're not too late to jump in and get good at Midjourney or ChatGPT. These are the tools that we have now. Who knows what we'll have in the future, but it will of course help you to keep up to date with these things. So I think that's the key thing, is experiment, have fun with these tools, whether you like them or not. At the moment, they are tools. Maybe they'll cross the line from a tool to a collaborator very soon. You could argue maybe they are collaborators right now. But I think the most important thing is have fun with it and play with these and test them out, and don't ignore it.